and used it himself, and used it at the early, within the time that he was practicing as a physician. I think used it because he liked it. Used it because it did give him a buzz and could give him kind of a euphoria and uplift him throughout the day, as we know.
Well, it's perfect for if you're under stress and you do respond to that drug that way. I mean, it's we've both talked about it. It's kind of the perfect remedy to that feeling of being overwhelmed, or if you're, it takes care of the stress. It also gives you a little bit of energy, but it settles you down too, so that you can kind of keep calm in situations that would rattle people more,
Yeah. And so what I know is that it was, the drug reps would come by and give him an abundance, and he got so sort of familiar with it that he prescribed it quite readily. And people did, like you said, people did come back and say, hey, I need more of that. And he had a sort of a community of patients who needed that. And I don't think that was unique to him. I think that was quite a common thing, both with hydrocodone and barbiturates and all sorts of those drugs, that they were readily available, and there wasn't a fraction known about them as it is today. Not a fraction.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a strange thing. Like I look back at those times, like any time before they made everything Schedule 1, like people were using hallucinogens. People were, like there's a large population, or large percentage apparently of stay-at-home women who were taking opiates throughout the day, kind of thing. Or, it's just, there were large populations or subsets of the population who were using some type of drug that is now illegal to kind of just, take the edge off, I guess. And nobody really, you never heard about it. Like it wasn't, that generation never really talked about that stuff in that way. This is like, when did AA start getting big? I guess it peaked in the 90s, but it was what started quite a ways back.
I think so. Yeah, I'd have to look that up, to be honest with you. But again, you're exactly right that, like, in terms of it being a household discussion, addictive behavior wasn't a household discussion. In fact, it was a household secret, I think.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if it's even a secret so much as maybe for some people. How did your grandpa tell his patients that he used that product himself?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, but I will say this, that within his community, it was known well enough about his relationship with hydrocodone that when he retired, he was given a liquor bottle full of hydrocodone with a martini glass on top.
Yeah. And
that no one batted an eye to that.
Yeah. And I think there's, like, in many ways, we need to look at that and learn something in comparison to how we're looking now. The lens has been distorted way out of whack. And I mean, there's obvious problems with maybe taking that too lightly, but I look at a case like that and I look at it like like anybody who is involved with healthcare should. It's risk versus benefit. So, I mean, was the public harmed by your grandpa's use of hydrocodone, or was he able to do things that maybe he wouldn't have been able to otherwise?
It's a great question,
right? Something to think about there. And personally, I mean, let's look at if longevity, our Western culture is obsessed with longevity for some reason. If longevity is the metric you're after, I mean, if the guy makes it to 95, that's kind of a hat tip. And, I had this discussion with my dad a little while ago. I was talking about how if people understood how pharmaceutical grade or, regulated drugs, how they are dangerous, but they are also very manageable long-term. they're not like people think of somebody who uses, say, like methamphetamines would be the most extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
And the media has done an excellent job of conjuring up this person who's on the street and they've got probably mental health issues. And by the way, they're using methamphetamines, and, they do these, everyone likes those, like that intervention show, which is nonsense. And the before and after pictures and stuff like that. And it's like, because of that, people are really unaware, or the idea is very exaggerated, of how dangerous the drug itself is in comparison to the indirect effects of that drug, what it does to your ability to have a stable lifestyle, or have a stable home life, relationship, keep you employed and off the streets. And it's more those other factors that are contributing to the way that person is behaving and looks and is presented, that combined with mental health issues. And but it's unfair to pile that all on. It's not unfair, nothing to do with that, really. It's not correct to pile that all onto the drug and say that drugs are bad because look at this person. That's not how it works. That's not how science works.
Yeah. And to me, I think this story, and as we move on to the kind of the next chapter of it in a moment, it is interesting in, like you said, that there are a lot of people in our society who are high functioning under the use of a substance for a long period of time, and that it has many, many faces. Mm-hmm. What I think becomes interesting about my grandpa's story was where it diverges from it being something that was fairly open and kind of acceptable and known to in his old age, what that started to look like, and how his use of it then did teeter towards secrecy.
Yeah.
That's something I can really relate to. And looking back at my early, the first times that I ever tried an opiate or experimented with it to see what it felt like, and I didn't go back to it the next day, to then when I was using it in secret and had to go back to it the next day, and it generated a different feeling of coping in me than it did earlier in the road when I was just trying it out and it felt good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a big piece of the whole puzzle right there.
It is. So, after my grandpa retired and he received this liquor bottle, 26er full of hydrocodone with a martini glass, presumably he was able to, he was no longer practicing. He was able to write his own prescriptions for a period of time. And I don't know, to be honest, if he was writing prescriptions for that for himself, but I do know that even into his old age, he was able to get prescriptions for it from his own doctors. Now, within the medical community, there's the widely accepted term of the old boys club, and that physicians look out for each other, and that a retired physician has some privilege that someone who's not a physician would have within that community. And he was able to go to his various family doctors, to, as one would retire and he'd get a new one, kind of a thing, and still obtain a prescription for it. And I was talking to my dad about this because my dad in my grandpa's old age would often accompany him to the doctor for his appointments, and just to help with hearing and help with all of the information and appointments and stuff like that. And my dad recalls the last time he got any hydrocodone, he had said to his doctor, "Oh yeah, just one more thing. I need Nova Histex." And his doctor had said, "Well, what do you need that for? You don't have a cough. You're not sick." Well, I like to have it, and I usually have some on hand, and kind of a thing. And his doctor said, "Well, I can't get it by that name," and ended up sort of reluctantly saying, "Okay, yeah, sure," and wrote him a prescription for the equivalent of Nova Histex or some sort of a hydrocodone syrup. And my dad sort of shaking his head and saying, "Well, like, you kind of pulled one over there on him, or was that necessary?" kind of a thing. And I think that's an important part of the story, in that there is that sort of either enabling behavior, or at least I think there are many, many people within our population who couldn't go into their doctor now or within the last number of years and say, hey, I need a prescription for hydrocodone for no reason, and receive it without question.
Yeah. It does depend on the physician for sure. I mean, doctors aren't, they're not silly. They can pick it out when you're like that. That would be, these days you would classify that as classic drug seeking behavior.
Yes.
And that doctor probably, well, maybe that doctor flagged him immediately for that, but then looked at the situation and thought, here's a guy who's been and done things I can't imagine. He's made it this far and he's asking for, something that's relatively benign. And it's not what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to make an exception. And I think there's a lot of healthcare professionals out there who see past the regulations sometimes. And maybe that's what that was.
Yeah. I think it was exactly that. And I'm not knocking or blaming that doctor for it, but it's with a drug like that. I mean, it required access, and it required him to have the support of someone on the other side to help him get it. And that's not to say he certainly wasn't using it all the time, because a bottle lasted him for a long time. And I think that last time that he got it lasted him for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I would challenge anybody to do a clinical trial where you go dose per dose, alcohol to Novohistex. Maybe not Novohistex because it's got a lot of other garbage in there, including a lot of sugar. I think they put a lot of sweetener in there. So maybe go just dose to dose, make it pure ethanol in whatever form is palatable, and same with hydrocodone, and equivalent dose day to day, and see who lives longer, see who deteriorates faster, and see which has more impact on that person's functioning and way of life.
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge. And not that we are recommending that trial take place as a disclaimer, but it's an interesting discussion.
Look, if you got the money to make that trial happen, I mean, there's so much of that type of information that is just, I know why they don't do those trials, because it doesn't fit the narrative was and has been set up a certain way, and it's been done for a purpose, and to change that is going to take monumental effort. I mean, there's people out there who are trying, but it's going to take a long time, because man, did they brainwash the shit out of people over the last, basically from when your grandpa retired till now. It has been an onslaught, like a media campaign, a blitzkrieg of anti-drug this and anti-drug that for, racial division purposes, for anytime they needed a scapegoat. They've used it effectively that way for so long. I don't know if it'll ever change, but
yeah. And it's very interesting that codeine syrups and hydrocodone syrups became much more strictly regulated and banned after they were adopted by the Black community in the United States.
Like I am amazed sometimes that Black people don't continually riot in the United States. I mean, the amount of just blatant usury, I guess, not in the classic definition of the sense, but just, I mean, they've been using them as a scapegoat for so long and anytime anything gets out of control, anytime a drug gets sensationalized in the media, I mean, that one was perfect, right? Because it's not only is it being sensationalized, but it's causing the white people to freak out because their kids are going to use drugs because the Black people are singing about it in a song. So therefore it's the Black people's fault. And,
Yep.
it's like, man, it's a, if the drug was that dangerous, then what was your stance on it before? And all these changes need to be, there needs to be significant evidence to back up making the decisions that are being made, but they're unfortunately not made by people who know that much about drugs.
No.
So that's what you get, I guess.